Hello everyone, let me just make sure everything is working. I think I'm live. Um, let's just double check that everything's working as expected, and yes, I'm live. Okay, so, so in this video I'm going to be working on a logo intro, and I got it mostly completed, but I still want to show you guys like a breakdown of what's going on here, and what goes into making one on Blender. So yeah, this should be interesting. Um, yeah. Alrighty. So if I go into the 3D viewport, you can see it's a relatively simple setup, and let me just make sure my stream is working here. I believe it is. Yeah, everything's good. Alright, so we got the scene here, and what's going on is I added several objects. Yeah, I added several objects, and what I'm doing here is I'm creating one of those intro videos you see when you watch a video, so like it's gonna pan from side to side, and it is an animation, so it's a little more interesting than creating just an image. So I thought that we change things a little bit, and instead of just creating images, maybe we'll do an animation now, and that's what we're gonna do today. So yeah, and I hope to do more animations in the future. So yeah, so for this file I'm going to be using optics because it speeds up the viewport. If you have a GPU that supports that, it definitely helps a lot. And so let's go into render view, and what we got here is a pretty interesting setup. So I got my logo here, and the way I did that is I just simply, let me go back into solid view. I got my YouTube logo here, and to add that, all I did is I added a text object, which would be this text object, and then I just went into edit mode, typed my YouTube name, which is funny1048. Then all I did is I changed some settings such as the font, changed the extrusion level, changed the offset, and you don't want to go too crazy with this, otherwise it messes a lot of stuff up. So you could change like the depth, there's a lot of settings you could change, resolution, yeah. And what I did is I did change the font, made it a little different, and let's just say that's a good scale. So I'm going to just apply that transform, and then all I did is I converted it to a mesh. So convert it to a mesh, and then I just gave it a material which was just dark metal, and then I duplicated it, scaled it on the z-axis just like that, and for some reason the shading doesn't look too good. Actually, I just had to apply the scale, so that fixed that. Or I have to convert it to a mesh, which fixes most things. So make sure you always convert your objects to a mesh, and then you apply auto smooth, which will fix the shading up. And yeah, so I just basically gave the bottom piece some light, which was mission, which this one, and I just made it blue, gave it a strength of like 100, and that's what we get. Oh, and then the top, of course, was just a a dark metallic material, which is like that. And there you go. So that's basically how I created the text. So I'm going to delete that because I already got the text there. yeah, so for the camera animation, I'm going to actually play this now so you guys can see what I did here, and I'm going to go into Eevee just to get a quick preview so you guys can see it. And I'm going to enable all these settings to basically improve how things look. Screen space reflections can be on. Don't enable half res trace, it does lower quality, so I tend to turn that off. Color management should be always filmic, and simplify, I don't need that. And let's see, the bloom is a little bit too intense, so it's actually way too intense. I'm going to just turn down the radius and maybe the intensity, and something like that's not bad. So yeah, let me play this video and you guys could see what we got here. And of course this is going to be rendered in cycles, but it kind of gives you a general idea of how the animation is going to look. So yeah, that's what we got. Relatively simple, but it's definitely going to look pretty good. And of course, in cycles, I got an additional material that you might have noticed in the beginning of the video, and that is the water. So this is an interesting one because this one uses micro displacement, and it's actually a unique trick I came up with. So in solid view, you don't see the texture, you only see it in rendered view. And you can see I just moved a plane up, and if you move it farther up, it kind of takes too much. So I kind of kept it lower like that, something like that. And then I just gave it clear glass material, which is just going to be like water. And I kept the roughness really low. And one thing interesting you could do, I'm not sure how it's going to look, but if I put like a plane underneath even that, I could just adjust I could give that a texture that gives out light, and honestly I don't know how this is going to look, so it could look bad, it could look good. Let's just see. Yeah, that's certainly interesting. Now the water's sort of like glowing. What if I put it like 10,000? Wow, that is a pretty crazy effect, but I think it's going to become problematic, unfortunately, because if we just go to regular view, yeah, it causes a lot of noise, and it's just not usually the best thing to do with, yeah, it just can cause a lot of noise. But it certainly looks pretty cool. Now what if I turn the roughness up? Yeah, it doesn't look as good, so I'm not going to do that. But anyway, yeah, what I basically did is I added water underneath, and I just gave it a displacement texture, and I used experimental micro displacement, which was here in the viewport, and I could, of course, turn that quality up in the viewport up to 1 micropixel, which should make things slower, but again, the quality is improved. So I'm going to go back into the shader editor and show you guys what's going on. So, relatively simple setup. So what I got going on here is, I don't even need the Voronoi. It's actually a very simple setup. So it's just a wave texture that I got, and I got it using object coordinates, and what's going on exactly is, if we go into Eevee, you won't see the displacement, but you kind of get a general idea of how this works. So yeah, that's the water, and of course it's flat. There's no displacement, but it'll give you a good idea of how this is working. So I animated the Y direction. So in other words, it's going this way as time goes on. So you could see that the water is moving this way, downwards, and that will look pretty cool. Yeah, so that's interesting. And that's going to make it like the water's flowing over top this when you're in cycles. If that makes sense. Yeah. So that's how that effect works. And it should, I'm thinking it'll make things look more realistic, like water's actually flowing over, and it's just gonna look pretty cool, I think. So what I want to show you guys now is the camera animation. So let's go back to camera view and play the animation again. And honestly, this was it was a little challenging, but the way I did the camera animation is instead of keyframing everything manually, what I did, for example, is let's just add a new camera, and we could just move that wherever we want, like over here, object, and I'm gonna set it as the camera. Cameras, and set active object as camera. So now we can mess around with this camera and not affect that one. So I'm just going to show you like a really brief example here just to make things less confusing. So we're in Eevee now, but let's just go back into regular view. And yeah, so for the animation, let's go to frame 0, and what I'm going to do here is turn on automatic keyframing, and this I'm going to just show you guys how I make cinematic camera pans. So let me actually move that down on the Z-axis. I think that would look better, and we're going to start out at something like that, and all you've got to do is just go into, let's say, would it be, I gotta find the setting here for, I'm not sure. I believe it's on navigation. Yes, walk navigation. And this is where things become interesting. So if you go into walk navigation, I'm sorry. If you go into viewport walk navigation, you can actually walk with the camera using WASD on your keyboard, and you could do something like that, and it's all free movement, so you can just move your camera wherever you want. And let me bring down the focal length to something like 35 just to make it more realistic, and I'm just gonna kind of swing around to both sides. So now I'm gonna go into, well, that setting again, which was where is it again? Navigation, yeah. So before you do that though, you have to play your video so it can keyframe it. And you may want to adjust your frame rate before you do this. In my case, I'm going to leave it at 24. So before you do that, just press play and quickly go into navigation and then walk navigation. And now you're keyframing it. Just keep in mind what you're doing. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. And now let's just fly over. Woo! And that went a little bit crazy. Yikes. Yeah, that didn't go too well because what happened is the video was too short. I had to increase the frames to like 2,000. So it kind of like replayed itself and it didn't work right, so we got to do that again. So let's try one more time and go into play the video and quickly go again and click on walk navigation, and now it's keyframing everything. And now let's fly over. And now again. And one more time. Perfect. And that may look terrible now, and it probably will. So if we place something like this, it's going to look really, really bad. it's going to look very choppy, and that's normal. I'm going to show you how to fix that. So, yeah, it just looks very choppy. Everything's shaking all over the place. The camera's not smooth. So what you have to do is you actually have to go into the graph editor. And look at all these keyframes we got. So we got our camera keyframes here, and there's a lot of things that got missed. So before you start doing anything here, what you must do is click on, I believe the setting is key, and then you have to, it would be, let's see, where's this setting? I know it's here somewhere. It's called sample keyframes. Not sure why I don't see it. Hang on 1 second. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I didn't see it. So sample keyframes, and that's the setting. So that just basically fills in the gaps in the recorded keyframes. Hopefully that makes sense. It's the best way I can explain it. So let me play that again. And you see it's still going to be pretty rough. Yeah, it didn't really help anything, and that's normal. So we're going to go back, and the real setting you need to click on here is smooth keys. And you can press Alt-O as the hotkey. So I pressed it a few times, and it should smooth it out just a little bit more. Maybe not good enough. And yeah, look, it's a little bit more, it's a little more fluid. Things are a little more smooth. Still rough, so if you want to make it look less like it's handheld, just hold down Alt-O on your keyboard, and it will continually interpolate things and make it smoother and smoother. So it's adjusting it right now, and that should be good. So yeah, let's go play back the video and see how things look now. Much, much, much better. So now it looks almost perfect. There's no more bumpiness or shakiness in the camera, and it looks very cinematic. And yeah, that looks great. Yeah. So one thing you can do is you can still adjust things after this. So let's go back into the graph editor again. And you see you got all the movements, and these coordinates here, like you see we got the X, Y, and Z axis. That just represents rotations and locations of your camera. So what you can do is if let's say you play this back and you're like, oh, it's playing back too fast. I want to slow things down. It's actually more simple than you expect. All you got to do is just go back into your F curves and S, or yeah, S4. Oh wait, yeah, S4, and that should make it 4 times longer, and then you can just grab the first keyframe and align it with the beginning. And then if we play that back, it should, for some reason it's not working properly. Let me try it again. Oh, so for some reason it's not, not sure what's going on. Oh, so you don't want to do it in the graph, because that's going to affect where things are positioned. So you want to do it in this view, your timeline. So S4 here, and then grab everything and make sure it's aligned to the beginning. And now it will be 4 times slower, and we'll just let this play through. It's a little long, but you'll see how everything's nice and smooth. So I'm just going to fast forward, and yeah, let's go into Eevee, and yeah. So it's playing, and camera's going to pan over. It's going much, much slower. Now it's going to turn around. Now it's going to go back. And everything's nice and smooth. Yeah, and that certainly is interesting. So you not only can you go quicker, you could like go S.2, and now everything's gonna go super duper fast. I'm not sure why you'd want to do this, but maybe you said, oh, the camera's moving too slow. Let's speed things up. So now if we go back, you could go even faster, S.2 again. It's going to be super duper fast. So I'll play this. Look at that. Whoa. Crazy. But yeah, you can do a lot of stuff. So I'm going to actually delete this camera because this was just to show you an example of what I was doing here. This is the main camera that I want to go back into. So that's basically what I did to make all the camera movements. And let me tell you, it's an awesome thing to do. Animating your camera like that is a very fast way to get realistic animations. It's really helpful, and you can completely control by applying how much smoothing you apply to the keyframes. You can completely adjust how much of a handheld look you want to add to your footage or your camera movement in Blender. Yeah. So now let's go on to lighting. And it is very important to get the lighting correct. It really helps get things to look nice. So if I go into render view for now, and let me see, I got a light here. I'm actually not going to be using it, so I'm going to delete this light. Now, if you look, it's very subtle, but what you notice is one part of the bottom is reddish, and the other part is blue. And I tend to do that a lot with my animations. It looks better than like having a light that's all just one color. So if I, for example, hide this and just add a light and an area light, and just kind of bring it back and maybe move it over there, bring the strength up a lot, and just make it pure white. And yeah, kind of boring, so I kind of thought, so I'm going to delete that light and then re-enable the other lights. And I kind of like the mix of colors, and of course you can get really intense with these colors. Like you can go all the way up to 10,000, but I think 2,000 is pretty good. So I'm going to go back, and I just use two lights that kind of cover everything here in the perfect, kind of makes things look better. And of course I also used a sky texture, and that just is for the overall world lighting. And for the settings on that, I just kind of adjusted things because it's important to, I used let me go into the material options here for a second. So shader editor and then world, and you could see that I just used the Nishida, is that how I say it? The Nishida sky texture. And I used the sun size and scaled it up. Otherwise the shadows are just too sharp, so I had to scale it up. and I turned down the strength of the sun, and of course you could turn down the background, but I kind of liked it, so I turned it up, and I didn't want to go too high, otherwise it doesn't look nice. So yeah, you'll notice it does slow your render time down a lot. That's something I've been noticing. Let me actually go into camera view, and so if I go and turn this off, yeah, you can see how important that world lighting is. Like before and then after, it adds more of an ambience to the light. It's just very important. And yeah, so that's my lighting setup, and I turned up the ozone to make things not so orange. Yeah. So now it's for the compositing, and let's go to the compositor. Okay, so I rendered out an image before. I didn't want to render it out on video because it takes a little while, and it's actually one of my more relatively simple setups, and the reason I made it less complex is because I want to help beginners understand how to do compositing. And I am going to have this file up on my Patreon, so if you're a supporter on my Patreon, you will get this file. Again, it's only $2 a month, and you will receive all of these scene files that I cover on YouTube. You'll get the actual blend file that you can basically open it up on your computer and explore it. So that will be for Patreon subscribers, and I will have a link in the description for that. So anyway, with the compositing, what I got going on here is I got a texture, and first of all I got the image, and I rendered only at, let's see, 64 samples, and you can see it's very noisy, but the noise cleans everything up almost. And what I did is I just took the noise, connected all the passes up, and I'm going to just temporarily disable the noise because it makes everything slower, and I want to speed things up here so I can help my computer out when showing you guys this. So the first node I used is glare, and all that does is add some lens glare, and I turned it to ghosts, and what this does is it adds these subtle, interesting effects. So like if I turn up the mix amount, you'll see, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so it kind of like makes a ghosting effect, and that's pretty cool. So I didn't want too much of that. I want it to be I want it to be there, but not over the top. So that's how I adjusted that. Then I added just some fog glow. And remember, guys, when compositing, nodes are always left to right. So when you add a node here, this node will be working on top of this. So for example, if I got this image and then I add another node here, this will be on top of the ghosts. So first it adds ghosts, then it adds the fog glow, then the lens distortion comes in, then I get the sunbeams, which are extracted from the image, which is here, and then I add that on top, back over the original image, and then finally I do some color grading, and then I multiply that by just noise, if that makes sense. And then what I do is I add those two images back by the same amount, so nothing's darkened, and the net effect on the image brightness is 0. And then finally I have the denoise turned off, and you will see that we have our image here. So first off, I want to ask, does anybody have any questions? If anybody watching has any questions, I can answer them at any time. So don't see any questions so far, because I do want to make things as understandable for you guys as possible. Okay. So I don't see any questions. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you in the compositor. I'm actually going to add an effect. We're going to do something from scratch, and it's going to be not super complex because I've been doing mostly very advanced stuff, and I want to help out the beginners that are just starting Blender to kind of gain like just an experience with it and just better understand the node-based workflow. So let me move everything out of the way, and to make things less confusing, I could just shrink these nodes here to kind of make everything look more organized, and we could just drag these out of the way and just pretend these don't exist for now while I show you guys how we start. So normally I start with this, and we're just going to be, for this, we're just going to be adding glare and distortion. That's all we're going to do, just to gain a very basic understanding in how to composite things together. So if I add something like, let's see, just glare, you see we have our original image here, and that comes from the render layers. And if I connect that to the glare, and then Control Shift to click on the node tree and preview it, you can see it default starts out with streaks, but I usually turn it to fog glow, and maybe bring up the size to 9, and then just turn down the threshold until you get something you're happy with. Maybe like, actually that should be turned up. And what this value's actually doing is it's saying only apply, take the pixels that are brighter than this value, so brighter in this case than 10, and give this effect only to those pixels. So if I go to mix on 1, you will see the actual glare effect. And if I turn up the threshold too high, what you're going to start to notice will happen is less and less. You'll get less and less until nothing is glowing anymore. So I think 10 is a good value. And for mix, you could leave this at 0, but I think it's too much, so I want to mix some of it back in with the original image. So I'll set it to like -0.5. And that might be alright. Maybe it's a little too strong. -0.7 should be good. Yeah. And then all we have to do to get the distortion is lens distortion, and you can just turn up the dispersion to like 0.05. And that's the lens distortion. And then of course I always use denoise. And then connect that to the normal and the albedo passes, which is just the diffuse color in normal. So you just connect it up this way. And then, yeah, that's how you basically start out with compositing. And then when you get more advanced at it, so I'm going to delete this now. You get something more like this. And let me just open up all these nodes. Yeah, so when you get more advanced at compositing, you get more you can create more crazy node trees like these, and you guys will get there quicker than you would believe. I honestly never thought that I'd be able to do this, but then here I am creating crazy node setups that I never thought that I'd be able to do and understand. But as with everything, practice will give you experience, and eventually you guys, I have confidence that you will be able to do this. And you guys will be able to create awesome animations. Yeah, and I really hope these videos are helping you guys with Blender. So I'm gonna actually open up an old file just to show you how crazy these node trees can get. And I think I might have shown you guys this node tree on my other this node setup on another video I uploaded. So we can go to, and this was that VFX animation visual effects that I uploaded a while back. I think it's like 10 videos back or something. It had the spaceships going through my backyard, and this required a massive node setup. But yes, I believe you guys can get there. Like, look at this. There's over 60 nodes here. There's a lot going on. Yeah, so. But the basic way that compositing works is it actually works the same with this as with something more simple like this. Again, it's always left to right, and then sometimes things are multiplied on top of each other, mixed. When you really just look at the overall, when you really just zoom in, it's just some mixing, multiplying, and adding. It makes things less intimidating when you look at a small part of the compositing setup rather than just looking at the whole thing at once. So that's how I try to understand it, and it helped me a lot over the years. So if you're compositing, just try to understand what each little piece is doing. Don't try to look at the whole thing at once as a whole. That will just confuse and basically scare you in with the complexity of it. Instead, just look at, okay, we're adding glare here, then we're adding ghosting here, then glare, then lens distortion, sunbeams, then adding that on top, then doing color balance, then multiplying it by just some film grain, and then adding that image back onto itself 0.2 times to even out the brightness loss. And that's how I try to approach this. It makes it much more simple than saying, okay, what is this doing? I don't know what's going on here. So it's always better just to look at what each individual piece is doing, and it will just make things a lot more simpler. And it makes things much more easy to understand. So I'm going to actually X this one out and go back into this one. So yeah, so I'm going to just render this out, the animation, and I got the music already that I did, and this is another song that I did to create for the intro. I'm going to just bring this here. This is LMMS. It's an open source software. It's awesome. And I used synthesizers to create these effects. So I'm actually first of all going to play the whole song. And it's not finished yet, but this is going to be, I'm just going to be using a small piece of this song for the logo intro. But let's just play the whole song for now. And you guys can listen. I'm sorry, I think it was clipping. The audio was too loud on my computer, so I'm going to turn down the audio quickly and play that again. So yeah, that's basically how things are looking so far. And now just for the logo animation, it's just going to be this 8-second part of it, which I decided to use. And I'm going to play that quickly. Yeah, and that should be cool when I add it to the logo animation. This is going to be used on my future videos for the intro. Should make things, I guess, look more professional. So yeah, I always wanted a logo animation, and yeah, now I can apply it to my YouTube video, and I can actually create these for you. So I do things on Fiverr, and I can create logo animations for you, and again, that link is also in the description. Yeah, I hope this video helped you guys out. I hope that it gave you basic understanding in how I do some of my compositing and can help you guys out too. Of course, I'm going to be having tons of videos in the future, and I mean lots of videos. I'm going to be covering every single part of Blender that you could imagine. I'm going to be covering materials. I'm going to be covering additional compositing. Every single topic there is in compositing to cover, I will cover it. I will be covering animation. I will be doing rigging machines in Blender to animate them. I will probably do rig robot models to animate them. I'll be doing particle simulations. I'll be doing smoke simulations, explosion simulations, all within Blender. Let's see, what else will I be doing? I will be doing so animations, fluid simulations. Yeah, I don't know what else there is. So basically, I will be covering every aspect of Blender there is to cover. And we will be doing some advanced animations, like professional ones. And I'll be also doing visual effects. So that should be cool. And of course, I will be giving you guys these project files all on my Patreon, which the link is in the description. And yeah, so I really hope these tutorials are helping you guys, and I hope it inspires you to create cool animations in Blender. So thank you guys for watching, and yeah.